Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today at this domestic violence vigil. We thank you so much for coming and showing your support. My name is Christina Deweese, and I am co-chair of the Somerville Commission for Women. I'll be doing my introduction in English and in Spanish, en español. So first, English. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that if domestic violence brings up anything that you would like to discuss with a professional, we have a member from the Trauma Response Network here. Nancy Bocci, if you could please raise your hand. And Natalie Hill. Thank you. Today, we want to pay respect to the lives lost because of domestic violence in Massachusetts this year. After our speaking program, Amanda Reich-Muth from Respond Inc. will be reading the names of the people we have lost this year, and we will be observing a moment of silence to honor them. Domestic violence happens in all communities, all genders, all races, all sexual orientations, all classes. And to those who've experienced it, please know you are not alone. You can reach out to the Somerville Police. If you have concerns over your immigration status, the Somerville Police would discuss your options before taking any actions. Please do not let this be a deterrent. Please reach out to Family Services. Also, I want to call out some additional numbers that you can call for and some domestic violence organizations that we have, that if you had an incident that you wanted to speak with somebody, you could. We have Respond, who speaks Spanish, French Creole, Portuguese, Amarak, and Tingrinya. I'm sorry for the pronunciations of those Ethiopian languages. And Respond's phone number is 617-623-5900. We also have Lared, who also speaks Spanish. That is 617-742-4911. We also have MAPS that speak Portuguese and Cape Verdean Creole, and their number is 617-864-7600. I want to say also that there are many moving parts in planning an event such as this, and I'd like to thank Chris Hossman, the staff liaison of the Somerville Commission for Women, Doug Kress, Director of Health and Human Services for City of Somerville, Nancy Bocci, Deputy Director of Health and Human Services for the City of Somerville, as well as Jessica Braden and Amanda Reich-Muth from Respond Inc. for their continued support. I also want to thank all the incredible local resources who are represented here at the resource fair that was held before the vigil. Thank you. Somerville is a very busy place with a lot of meetings and events happening, which is the case tonight. We have heard from a number of elected officials who sent their regrets as they had prior commitments. I do also want to acknowledge that we're able to have some elected officials here tonight. Representative Denise Provost, she had to leave for a prior engagement but was here. We have Representative Mike Conley. We have Alderman Ward 1 Matt McLaughlin. We have school committee member Lee Erica Palmer as well. I also would like to draw your attention to our display of the Clothesline Project, which is right over here to my right. The Clothesline Project is a program started in Cape Cod, Massachusetts in 1990 to address the issues of violence against women. It's a vehicle for women affected by violence to express their emotions by creating a shirt. They can then hang that shirt on the clothesline to be viewed as others as testimony to the problem of violence against women. With the support of many, it has been spread across the world. Thank you again for showing your support to be here, by being here. I will now read the Spanish portion, and then we will be starting our speaking program. Buenas tardes y muchas gracias por estar aquí y por su apoyo. Me llamo Cristina Duis y soy co-chair de la Comisión de Mujeres de Somerville. Antes de empezar, quiero decirles que sí vamos a hablar de violencia doméstica. Si eso es algo que es sensible para ustedes, sí voy a estar dando números que pueden llamar. También hoy queremos dar nuestro respeto a las vidas perdidas por la causa de violencia doméstica en Massachusetts en este año. Después de la presentación de las personas que van a hablar, Amanda Reich-Muth de Respond Inc. va a leer los nombres de las personas que hemos perdido este año y observaremos un momento de silencio para honrarlas. La violencia doméstica sucede en todas comunidades. No importa el color de su piel, no importa su orientación sexual, no importa cuánto dinero haces, pasa a todos. Y yo quiero que las personas que lo han vivido, que sepan que por favor no están solos. Por favor también quiero que sepan que pueden llamar a la policía. Y si tienen preocupaciones sobre su estado de inmigración, la policía de Somerville puede hablarles de sus opciones antes de tomar acción. Por favor, si algo les pasa, puedes llamar a la policía y preguntar por servicios de la familia. Hay muchas partes tratando de coordinar este evento y me gustaría agradecer a Chris Hossman, quien es el persona enlace de la Comisión de Mujeres de Somerville. Doug Kress, director de Salud y Servicios Humanos, y Nancy Bacci, directora de Servicios Humanos, también a Jessica Braden y Amanda Reich-Muth de Respond por su continuado apoyo. También quiero asegurar a darles otras opciones si algo les pasa, violencia doméstica. También tenemos organizaciones que hablan su idioma. Tenemos Respond, que puedes llamar a 617-623-5900. La red 617-742-4911. No, lo siento, 4911. Quisiera dirigir su atención aquí a este proyecto llamado Tendedero de Ropa. Este programa comenzó en Cape Cod, Massachusetts, en 1990 y está dirigido al tema de violencia contra mujeres. Este es un medio para mujeres afectadas por violencia pueden expresar sus emociones escribiendo en una camiseta. Ellas pueden colgar su camiseta en el tendedero para que otros puedan ver sus testimonios y el problema de violencia contra mujeres. Con el apoyo de mucha gente, este mensaje ha pasado por todo el mundo. Finalmente, también quiero decir que no tenemos todos los representantes que quisieran estar aquí de la ciudad de Somerville. Sí tenemos la representante Denise Provost, estaba aquí, tuvo que irse. Representante Mike Conley está aquí. Alderman Ward 1, Matt McLaughlin. Y del School Committee, Lee Erica Palmer. Muchas gracias otra vez por demostrar su apoyo estar aquí hoy día. Todos somos partes de muchas comunidades y es importante que todos nos protegemos uno al otro y que sepan que no son solos. Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to introduce Kristen, my co-chair for the Somerville Commission for Women, Kristen Strezzo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Christina. And I want to thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Kristen Strezzo, and I'm the co-chair of the Somerville Commission for Women. I'm going to focus on one statistic this year. In Massachusetts, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men reported rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner. If we personalize that statistic, it means that each of you here tonight have encountered someone in your day today that are enduring or have endured the trauma of domestic violence. Perhaps it was that person next to you on the train this morning that got a little short with you when you accidentally bumped into them. Perhaps it was the woman ahead of you at the checkout line that was taking forever to put her money back in her purse after her purchase. Because the trauma of abuse trickles into everyday life. It's all around us. And while we honor the victims whose lives were lost to intimate partner violence, we also wish to express the thought that Somerville will always stand with survivors as they rebuild their lives. Tonight is also about that. And we do so by presenting resources to prove that there are people eager to step forward and help those living in domestic violence situations and abusive situations. We have representatives from established resources that serve Somerville and beyond. And we have strong Somerville leadership lighting the way, assuring that everyone has a voice in this city. That support is necessary because getting out of an abusive situation can be harrowing. Moving past the instability of the unknown, clutching to the optimism that a better future exists, even if it seems absolutely impossible to consider. To abuse survivors in the crowd tonight, I want you to know that we see you, and we see your strength. We hear you. You are valued. You are a walking beacon of hope in a world crying out for inspiration. For the world is such a better place with you in it. Let us savor that optimism in the hope that we are building a better world for you, for our children, and for the next generation of Somerville. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Next, we have Mayor Joe Curtatone.
Good evening. Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Kristen, for those profound and powerful words. I do want to recognize, before I say a few words myself, two other leaders and colleagues of mine in government in the battle for social equity, the chairperson of the Somerville School Committee, Mr. Andre Green, and the president, and you'll hear from her in a little bit, the president of the Board of Aldermen from Ward 7, Ms. Katiana Ballantyne. Please, a round of applause is fine. Thank you. I want to start, as always, by thanking the Somerville Commission for Women, Respond, and all our community partners here this evening for not only sponsoring this event each and every year, but also for the work they do around domestic violence awareness, prevention, and really the support for victims and their families. I also want to in addition, also shout out and thank the Health and Human Services Department led by Doug Kress and Nancy Bocci and Chris Hossman, the most progressive and compassionate police department in these United States, the Somerville Police Department, and our fire departments, Cataldo Ambulance, and really to all of you and the entire community for joining us here tonight to remember, to honor, and to support the survivors of domestic violence. It's important that we gather here each year to remember victims and survivors, but it's also tragic and senseless that we really have to gather here and across this nation every year. Last year, when speaking, I spoke about the importance of events like these and the work that our sponsor organizations are doing to eradicate the stigma surrounding domestic violence. I think we can agree that's still true. There are too many of us, women, men, children, and people of all ages, who suffer many times they suffer in silence as a result of domestic violence. And the more we bring this issue to the forefront, the more vocal we are and the more we support, encourage, and love one another, really the closer we are to eliminating the stigma, but more importantly, decreasing and eliminating the members of victims and survivors that we gather to honor and mourn every year. As has been mentioned and will continue to be mentioned, in Massachusetts, nearly 1 in 2 women and 1 in 4 men have reported experiencing domestic violence. In a few minutes, we'll hear as we read out the names of Massachusetts residents who have lost their lives to domestic violence in the last year. And that number is far too large. We're here today collectively, and you do all the work you do in the community every day because we care. Because some of us may be impacted in some way by domestic violence. Because we hope for and we work actively towards a peaceful future. So as Kristen in her words has stated, and as you'll hear on and on tonight, let's continue to be that example, each of us, every day, of how to love one another, of how to support one another, and to be kind to one another. In this time of our nation, there's no greater need for examples of compassion, love, and kindness. And this community has shown over and over again that it can be that shining example. To those who have been impacted by domestic violence or know someone who is, we stand with you. As Kristen said, we hear you, we're listening, and we want to lead to eradicate the stigma and remove this violent scourge from our communities. We're here with you. You're not alone. I thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to be here tonight with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Joe Curtatone. Next, we have the President of the Board of Aldermen of Somerville, Kachiana Ballantyne, and also School Committee Member Andre Green. Thank you.
Good evening. On behalf of the Board of Aldermen, I thank you for coming tonight and for taking time to remember the victims of domestic violence who have died, to learn about supportive services available to those who are living with domestic violence. I want to thank the Somerville Women's Commission for volunteering their time to establish this vigil and for having this ceremony in one of Somerville's major squares for all to see. I brag about Somerville to all my friends and family who don't live here. I tell them Somerville residents love to be engaged, that Somerville has compassionate citizens. 4 such compassionate Somerville women opened their homes as safe havens for women fleeing abuse, and then started an organization called Respond, the first New England domestic violence agency and the second oldest in the nation. Thank you. Victims of domestic abuse have lost their power. And I think about power. How do we help to take back the power? And how do victims of domestic violence move forward and take their power back to control their lives? We are very fortunate that we have these resources like Respond, MAPS, Child Witness Project, Somerville Overcoming Addiction, the network La Red, First Responders, the Somerville Police Department Victims Witness Advocates. Victims of violence need these resources. They need to know these resources exist here, and they need to know how to find them. That's where we can help. We can all help by getting the word out, by telling everyone in our networks that these resources exist and where they can be found. Please, everyone, reach out and let everyone know about these resources available here. I know we are a compassionate community. Let's show our compassion by helping others to find the help that's available here. agree with me tonight that you will tweet, post on Facebook, at a minimum one of the services resources here before you go to bed. You might save a life. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, President. Next, we have School Committee Member Andre Green speaking.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish I weren't standing in front of you tonight. I wish, as I do every time we're here, I wish that this was an event that wasn't happening. Every time I'm here, I hope this is the last time that we have this vigil. Because every time I'm here, I hope that this is the year in which we address and eradicate the scourge of domestic violence. But as the cliche says, hope is not a strategy. And that's why, if I've got to be somewhere dealing with this problem, I'm glad to be dealing with it in Somerville. State Representative Christine Barber likes to say that the great thing about representing Somerville is that Somerville residents identify a problem and then they organize a group to solve it. And that's long been the Somerville way, which is why Response started here in Somerville, which is why we have a laundry list of volunteer organizations here to solve a plethora of social ills, and why I believe that if there's a city or town that will eradicate domestic violence, it will be Somerville. But it will take an entire community effort. Somerville Public Schools, therefore, has taken the lead. As Somerville, like we say to say in Somerville, Somerville leads the way. Somerville Public Schools has already taken the lead on addressing things like consent education, which, if recent events in our nation's capital should make it abundantly clear, is something we as a country still need to work on. So we work on consent education. We work on social emotional learning. We work to end the cycles of violence that lead to too many of our residents suffering from the scourge of domestic violence. And we know that through efforts like this, through efforts like the work of the Somerville Commission on Women, efforts of Respond, efforts of Somerville Overcoming Addiction, the list goes on, that together, we at Somerville will find a way to address this crisis that affects not just the one in 3 women, the 1 in 5 men, but each and every one of us in this community. And that we know that none of us will be safe until we all are. And so I look forward to another year of working and hoping that this will be the last domestic violence vigil we have to have in Somerville. But if it's not, I will be here with you again next year and the year after until we've solved this problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andre. Next, I would like to introduce some of the people from our first responders for the Somerville Police Department. Next, we have Sergeant Michael Peroni from the Somerville Police Department.
Thank you to the Somerville Women's Commission for having me here tonight. My name is Michael Perone, and I am the Sergeant in charge of the Family Services Unit at the Somerville Police Department. As a lifelong resident of the city and a police officer, I came here tonight to deliver a simple message. Domestic violence and sexual abuse will not be tolerated in our community. I was also asked by the Women's Commission to talk a little bit about what my unit does. We are comprised of myself, 2 police detectives, and a full-time civilian victim witness advocate, who you'll hear from a little bit later. Our investigators all have extensive experience and training in handling any type of case, but focus primarily on domestic violence, sexual assaults, restraining order and harassment orders, child abuse, hate crimes, elder abuse, crimes against disabled persons, and any other special circumstance related to the families of Somerville. I took over the Family Services Unit in February of this year. I knew I was taking on a difficult task, but firmly believed that I was the right person to stand up for our community survivors. And I say survivors rather than victims because that is exactly what they are. During my time in the Family Services Unit, I have seen some horrible and tragic incidents. most of these coming at the hands of a loved one or someone our survivors know. I carry the pain of these folks with me every day and channel it to ensure that we keep them safe when they come forward. I want to make it clear that my team stands ready to help anyone who may have experienced one of these horrific acts that I mentioned. We want our survivors to know that there is no pressure when dealing with us. We let our survivors drive the process. A visit to our office could consist of a simple informational visit for those who are not ready to move forward with a full police investigation or prosecution. Any conversation in our office is kept in the strictest confidence. We only move forward with a full investigation and prosecution when our survivors are ready. We see our relationship with our survivors as an equal partnership and as a team effort. This approach allows us to help people recover from these horrific acts. I would encourage anyone here tonight who knows someone that may have been the victim of domestic violence or sexual abuse, or may have been a victim themselves, to give us a call or stop in and see us at the Somerville Police Headquarters. We want the community to know we as a police department care deeply about our survivors and are here to help. Once again, I'd like to thank you, all of you here tonight, the Somerville Women's Commission, for inviting me this evening. And thanks to everybody else who has helped out in the community. Stay safe.
Thank you so much, Sergeant Michael Perone. Next, we have Lieutenant Francis Outing.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here tonight. Thank you to the Somerville Commission for Women for bringing us all here together, and thank you to each and every one of you standing here to honor those victims of domestic violence and also honor the survivors, the family, the friends. We are all impacted in some way by domestic violence. My name is Frances Otting. I'm a lieutenant with the Somerville Fire Department. When we first started talking about domestic violence more openly as communities, in our faith groups, as groups of friends, support groups, I think there were times when our messages were not as helpful or supportive. There were times when we would give messages such as, "You need to leave her," or "He's bad, you need to leave, he's dangerous, can't you see that?" And there was a lot of blame and shame that was often attached to those messages, which we didn't intend to convey. I'm here tonight with a message of empowerment. We understand that it's not that simple. There are a lot of factors involved, and people are all at different stages of change. Every first responder in the Somerville Fire Department is trained in responding appropriately to situations that involve domestic violence. We will meet you where you're at, figure out what you're willing to do and want to do in the moment, reflecting messages that were just shared by my colleague Sergeant Peroni. You make those choices. We're here to offer options. We want to be a partner with you in building a safety plan that you dictate. One of the ways that the Somerville Fire Department is continuing to equip our members in response is by supporting the city's efforts to train all personnel across all city departments in mental health first aid. So over the next 2 months, Somerville Fire Department will be partnering with Patty Contenti and other local partners, program leaders, to fully equip all of our first responders to understand the resources that are available and also offer consistent, positive messages. You can count on us to respond quickly when you call and interact with positive regard and empathy. We'll offer options and empowerment. As first responders, we're committed to the safety and well-being of every member of the Somerville community. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Francis Otting. Next, we have John Georges from Cataldo Ambulance Services.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight, the mayor, chief, my colleagues at the police and fire department, and the rest of the city groups that we affiliate with. So Cataldo Ambulance provides emergency medical services in the city for those that don't know, or if it's your first time attending. I work as a clinical field supervisor and shift commander. I've been in that position for about 10 years. This is probably my 7th or 8th event. Very proud and humbled to be here. You know, I don't want to repeat or echo as much as I want to emulate what everybody has said, especially the mayor and lieutenant. That was a really good act that I had to follow. We're cross-pollinating between our community groups and our public services we provide to the community at Cataldo, but not even just in Somerville and the Commonwealth, in our different towns that we serve. So as a field supervisor overseeing, operations, we're responding out to these incidents that are not biased and they affect everybody. We just created a system in our CAD when ambulances are responding to calls where a refusal might be warranted, and it says reportable. And this is something that we're going to be pushing out in the next few months. So if we have an incident of domestic violence or an incident of crime and we want to track statistics, not just homicide rates or when we go to assist the police or fire with some type of event, but where we can kind of track trends in violence, not only in the city of Somerville, but our other communities across the Commonwealth in the Middlesex County. A lot of times victims, they call for an ambulance, and as some of my colleagues said, people are reluctant to go. We might give advice that might not be good. So this training that we're going to be doing together is absolutely excellent for community first aid. We're all here for the same cause, and that's to help the community and help the public. And I think the more we spread the word, the more progress we're going to make. So I thank everybody for coming, and on behalf of Cataldo Ambulance, I'm privileged to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, John Georges. Next, we have Maureen. Oh, I'm sorry. Next, we have Nina Meconico. She is from the Children Witness to Violence Project.
Hello, everyone. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you to the City of Somerville for holding this event and raising this awareness about such an important situation and problem that we really have in this country. So I'm from the Child Witness to Violence Project. We are a therapeutic and advocacy program at Boston Medical Center where our primary focus is on helping children between the ages of birth and 8 years old who have experienced and witnessed domestic violence. So I was asked to come here today to kind of raise some awareness and shed a little bit of light on this topic from the child's perspective. So I want to share a story with you about a little boy that is not unlike many of the children that we see at our program at Boston Medical Center. So we will call him Xavier. So just imagine Xavier to be a 4-year-old boy who is on the verge of getting expelled from his preschool program because he is exhibiting all kinds of unsafe, aggressive behavior, kind of being aggressive with peers, being aggressive with other adults and his teachers. And in addition to that, Xavier is also having a whole host of problems at home. He's having difficulty sleeping at night. He's having nightmares about all of the things that he has seen, about some of those noises that he hears in the middle of the night when he's trying to sleep in his bed, and very worried about the safety of his parent who is being hurt and harmed by his other parent. And so
I know from our work that when you are a child and you are experiencing violence and chaos that is happening in your home, that is probably one of the most terrifying and confusing experiences that you can have, because your home is supposed to be your place of refuge. That's supposed to be your safe place where you go to get protection from the outside world, right? Where you feel you're safest. And when there are things that are happening in your home that are not safe, then you have nowhere else to go. And this is what DV, domestic violence, intimate partner violence does to children. It really shakes them at their core. It causes them to have all kinds of doubts and feelings about themselves, somehow feeling like they're responsible for what is happening in their home, and if that they can just be good enough, that maybe the fighting will stop. It also causes them to feel a lot of distrust in other people, distrust in the world, where they live in an environment and living in a world where they don't know how people are going to respond from one moment to the next. It also causes them to feel incredibly unsafe. Unsafe in their home, unsafe in their body, because experiencing these kinds of things also cause a lot of physiological symptoms. We know now from a lot of the research around brain science, right, that there are actual changes that can happen in the brain. The good news is that all hope is not lost, right? There are things that we can do to help, and programs like ours are one of those things. And what we know is that when kids are able to have relationships with positive, healthy, nurturing adults, whether that be another family member, a school teacher, whether that be a coach or a mentor, that's one of the single most important things to help kids really heal and thrive in the aftermath of experiencing these things. And that we all have a part to play in that. And if I can leave you with just two things about how we all play a part in that. So one is listen, right? Open yourself up to really listen with non-judgment, right? And to be able to ask a question, right? I think so many times we hear survivors say, nobody asked me, right? There were signs. I dropped little nuggets, but nobody asked me, right? Because it makes us feel uncomfortable. I think we have to kind of go beyond, right, and dare to ask those questions that make us uncomfortable, because that may be the one thing that's going to save a child and save a family. And I'm just going to leave you with a quote. So I had the pleasure several years back to hear the late Maya Angelou speak. And one of the things she talked about was her own trauma that she experienced as a child, and what she called rainbows in the clouds. And those were the adults and the people that were around her, right, who dared to ask the questions, who listened openly, who just sat with her, and who tried to create services and kind of create a system around her where she felt safe, she felt hope. And that is what I ask for you all today, that you be somebody's rainbow in the clouds.
Thank you, Nina. Next, we have Maureen DePaulo, the victim and witness advocate for the Somerville Police Department.
Good evening. Thank you to Chris for inviting me to share a few words about my work as an advocate at the Somerville Police Department in the Family Services Unit. I had the pleasure and opportunity to sit down with Kristen and Christina of the Somerville Women's Commission and discuss some of the work I do that may not be widely known to the community. As an advocate in the police department, I am able to assist anyone who is looking for advice, guidance, or support. You do not have to report to the police or have an open case with the court to receive my services. I'm able to work with anyone who is looking for help in navigating what can be a long, confusing, and frustrating process. The Somerville Police Department does not ask survivors to identify themselves in relation to sexual orientation, gender, race, immigration status, etc. We are lucky enough to have several officers available to assist in translations as well as relationships with local service providers that can also assist to ensure that each survivor feels understood. I can make recommendations for local agencies that reflect an individual's needs and concerns, taking into account that oftentimes survivors hesitate to report based on cultural concerns. I have connections to many service providers that connect survivors to someone in their community they can feel safe with. Our office consists of a sergeant, 2 detectives, and myself. We pride ourselves on treating each survivor with respect while listening to their story and supporting them to choose what happens next. Thank you again to the Somerville Women's Commission for asking me to speak, as well as respond to I could not possibly do my job without their guidance, trust, and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Next, I'd like to introduce Amanda Reich-Muth, Director of Programs and Services for Respond.
A little taller. Hello, everyone. I want to thank everyone for being here and everyone who made this day happen. So I have just a little bit to talk about domestic violence for everyone, and then I'm going to read the names of those whose lives were lost due to domestic violence, those folks who were killed this year since last October here in Massachusetts. So in domestic violence, the abuser uses physical, emotional, psychological, financial, and sexual abuse to maintain power and control over the victim. And so for the survivor to be able to find safety or even consider leaving the relationship requires immense amounts of courage, strength, creativity, and support. We at Respond have the honor to work with survivors every day and support them in finding ways to keep themselves and their children safer while they're in the relationship, plan for leaving the relationship, and maintain safety after having left. We are continually amazed by their courage, strength, and creativity to move through each day. From teaching the children a code word to know when to call the police, or changing their route to and from work after they've left so that they can keep their connections and maintain a job and continue their life free from abuse, to picking up the phone for that first call to our hotline and saying out loud that what's going on at home isn't safe. The courage that it takes, the creativity to come up with these plans. The survivor may not feel that they have the tools to change their situation because of all of the tactics of the abuse that the abuser has used to ensure that they cannot leave that relationship. Despite all these cards being stacked against the survivor by their abuser, we see survivors continually seeking safety in various ways. Statistically, it takes an average of 7 attempts for a survivor to leave the abusive relationship. That means 7 times gathering the courage to pack their things, go stay at a friend or a family member's house, while statistically it's 75% more dangerous at that time that the abuser may kill them. So unsurprisingly, the victim often returns, fearing what will happen when the abuser finds them if they don't return on their own. We also work with survivors who have left for that last time and need all the support from friends, family, staff, and you in the community to help them continue forward. The idea of having to leave your home with the person who was supposed to love and honor you to start from scratch is a scary and daunting task, even without having endured the abuse and the real fear that the abuser has created for them. But we see survivors take these steps every day and see them succeeding every day at starting fresh in a life free from abuse. We get to see them teaching their children nonviolent ways of interacting, see them returning to work, reconnecting with friends, supporting their child in taking a school trip, starting new, healthy relationships, and getting involved in their community. We see that the abuse they have endured often continues to color parts of their life, but also many survivors are able to move forward and continue on in a safe, healthy, happy life for themselves and their children. We always find it heartening when someone reaches back out to us after having ended services with us for a while and letting us know how they're doing, letting us know that they're still in that apartment they moved into when they left their shelter, that their children are doing great in school, and that they still feel safe. Or someone we see out in the community who's thankful for the work that we did with them, especially when we're at events like this where we're tabling out in the community. And then there's clients that we continue to see for years who continue to seek our support in order to continue safety planning and finding ways to keep their safety. As people have mentioned today, domestic violence happens to 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men. So there are certainly survivors here amongst us today. And we may not know who they are, but we are seeing survivors thriving every day, and we're honored by their courage and strength. So I'm now going to read the names of people who were killed this year in Massachusetts who died due to domestic violence. Some of them I'm going to read a bit of a story about what happened to them or a bit about their life. And some we're just going to read their name and kind of take a moment of pause to honor that person's life. January 5th, Krista Lee Steele Knudslin of North Adams, age 42, was killed in her home by her husband of 9 months. She was hit several times with a hammer and stabbed in the back with a large knife in their home. She was found after her husband went to the police, telling officers he had done something very bad. Krista is remembered as an active member of the transgender community and founder of both the Miss Trans America and Miss Trans New England pageants. These which brought together trans women from across the region. Her friends say of her, her thing was always that transgender women are beautiful and need a venue for trans women to be seen as beautiful. January 22nd, Janice Houston, age 65, of Montgomery. February 10th, Olivia Bergstrom, age 20, of Needham. February 23rd, Kimberly Lockett, age 43, of Springfield. Kimberly was allowing her ex-boyfriend to stay with her as he had nowhere else to go. He had officially moved out in January. Kimberly operated a daycare out of her home, and when a client arrived to drop off her child and Kimberly did not answer the door, she quickly called Kimberly's daughter. Kimberly's daughter discovered Kimberly stabbed to death and reported the incident to the Springfield police. The abuser confessed to family members that he had killed Kimberly. He then turned himself into police shortly after. March 26th. Luz Yanina Acevedo Gomez of Lynn, age 47. Luz was found dead in their apartment, having been beaten to death with a metal baseball bat by her husband. Police reported to the home after having heard concern from Luz's family. April 13th, Cassidy Clark of Hinsdale, age 24. Cassidy was shot in the driveway when she came to pick up her children from her ex. She was speaking with her ex from her car when the conversation became an argument. Cassidy's ex then pulled the 9mm from the small of his back, loaded a round in the chamber, and opened fire on Cassidy until the magazine was empty. He was carrying a second fully loaded magazine in his pocket. An autopsy performed determined that Cassidy died from multiple gunshot wounds to her head, torso, and upper extremities. Cassidy was a mother of 4 and loved being a nurse. She was studying to be a midwife and expected to graduate in 2019. Friends say that Cassidy would go out of her way to help those in need, whether it be her friends or total strangers. Friends also stated that her biggest accomplishment was her children, who are now in the care of family members. April 13th, Somerville native Joan Demio was murdered in Florida. Manatee County Sheriff's Office was called to her home for the report of a deceased person. Responding deputies found 60-year-old Joan Demio dead with trauma to her upper body. Later, deputies said that they had arrested 51-year-old Barack Posas in connection with Joan's murder. April 21st, Wendy Rose Davidson, age 49, of North Andover. May 12th, Bethji Cater, age 26, of Avon. May 28th, Yesenia Torres, age 28, of Lawrence. June 23rd, Brandon Chickless, age 20, of Worcester. June 25th, Dolores Chisholm, age 79, of West Boylston. June 29th, Janet Katzberg, age 60, of Holland. August 9th, Madeline Burgess, of Sturbridge. Madeline was killed by blunt force trauma inflicted by her boyfriend. He then put her body into the trunk of his car and drove across state lines to Maine. He was stopped there by police for reckless driving. He got out of the car and shot and killed himself. Madeline was living with her boyfriend for about 9 months. She had shared with her family some of her fears about her boyfriend and often took nights away from him to feel safe and to be with family. But she was careful about what she said and who she said it to, due to fear of the abuser. Madeline was being isolated by her boyfriend, who got angry and jealous when she would go to see her friends or her family. He worked to make her dependent on him. Madeline loved to dance. She has 4 siblings, and she wanted to go back to school to become a nurse. September 24th, Shayna Warner of Marshfield. She was killed by her estranged husband. He stabbed her 8 times, ran her over, and then shot her before running away, triggering a manhunt. Shayna Warner had filed for divorce twice, and she was in the process of filing a 3rd time. A hearing had been set for January. So if we can all just take a moment to honor these who've lost their lives and honor those who are currently surviving and those who are out of the relationships. Give a moment of silence to all of these. Thank you, everyone, for being here and honoring these lives that have been taken from us, and for the work that you are going to continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. I want to remind everybody that if this topic, I know it was very difficult to hear everything we just heard, and I just want to let everybody know that we do still have professionals, members from the Trauma Response Network here. If you'd like to speak with a professional, we have Nancy Bacci, if you could please raise your hands, and also Natalie Hill. All right, everyone, so please know that we do have resources here if you'd like to speak to somebody. Thank you. I thought we were going to announce Hannah Presley. Is she speaking?
At this time, I also want to recognize Anna Presley, who came to join us.
We just wanted to say thank you again. Thank you for holding this space. And thank you for everybody who was able to make this event happen, all the resources. We really appreciate it. Solo estoy diciendo que gracias otra vez. Gracias por este espacio. Gracias a todas las organizaciones aquí. Muchas gracias.
Thank you once more.
Again, I want to please join me in giving both Christina and Chris and the Women's Commission, everybody involved, a round of applause. Thank you for their leadership, not just their work, their leadership. And only because I made the same mistake speaking in this microphones for the viewing camera, this one is amplified. I do want to recognize a champion of equity in social progress and change, and she will be the newly elected Congresswoman for the 7th District, Ayanna Presley, for President tonight. I know she came here to be Vigil with all of us, but I'm going to ask her to come up and say a couple of things.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
This is the one that speaks out to me.
Okay. Yes, I am a municipal elected official and will soon have a new title, but I'm really not here in that capacity. I'm here as a sister in solidarity in this struggle, as someone who is not only a survivor of sexual violence, but who grew up in a household where I saw my mother battered. May she rest in power, Sandy, who at the hands of someone who said they loved her, tried to beat out of her joy, her dignity, her peace. My mother, Sandy, got beat for not smiling enough, for smiling too much, for being too pretty, too ugly, too smart, too proud. And what I lived in, and so many families are living in, because violence begets violence, and trauma begets trauma, that more often than not, what we are passing along is generational trauma. The gang-affiliated youth that I have worked with throughout my life, many of them being raised in single female-headed households or being raised by women, 1 in 4, who is a survivor of domestic or sexual violence. And those young men, because of their proximity to violence, have an increased likelihood, and many of them have gone on to violently offend. And so it's so critical that we continue to come together to disrupt these cycles. And the last thing that I would say is these national movements of Me Too and Time's Up and Enough is Enough, none of those are about domestic violence. They were about sexual violence and sexual harassment and rape culture. And so whenever we talk about violence, we must name all forms of it and continue to speak out about the intersectionality of all of these issues. So I thank the Women's Commission and all of you for being here in solidarity. this evening, and I'm so glad that we named those that we have lost or been robbed of, so that they will never just be statistics, but we will remember that they were people who loved and were loved, of flesh and bone. God bless.
Thank you, Ariana. Okay. With this, we close our ceremony. We wish you all a peaceful night.